Hey everybody, welcome to episode 7 of Teaching Tales. I am Brent Coley, your host, and with me today, I am super thrilled to have the one, the only, Rushton Hurley joining us. Rushton, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
I am proud to be the one and only, and I understand that that's a function of my unusual name, but I'm good. I'm good.
Well, Rushton, when I started the podcast, when I had the idea and it was formulating, you were one of the people that I wanted to have on because I have sent at conferences, and back in 2010 at the ICE conference in Illinois, I had the good fortune of getting to go to dinner with you and some other educators, and got to sit next to you. And I remember we talked about history, if I recall, our love of history, and what a great conversation. So I thought when I was doing this podcast, boy, if I could get Rushton to come on and join me, he's going to have some good stories to share, because when you have keynoted and your sessions that I've been to, you are a master storyteller. So thank you. I have been looking forward to this conversation for a while. So
total honor to be here. I will say that if I have some skills in the storytelling department, it comes from growing up listening to Baptist preachers on Sundays and Steve Martin albums the rest of the week, I think.
Well, those are some good storytellers there. Well, for somebody who may not know you, Rushton, let our listeners know, who are you? What have you been up to as far as education? Give them a little background.
Sure. So I was a high school teacher of Japanese language, left to become a principal of a K-12 school in Texas, and then an online high school, and then started a little shindig called Next Vista for Learning, and nextvista.org, which is designed to kind of highlight creative approaches to teaching and learning. We get teachers and students from around the world to share videos with us on different things that might be encountered in school, and it's all free, just a little save the world thing. But as a function of telling people about that, I started speaking at conferences to explain to folks that it's actually much easier to make a video than they think. And while that didn't generate a ton of videos on the front end, it did get people coming up to me and saying, hey, could you come and speak at our school? Hey, could you come and speak at our conference? And so suddenly I'm a person being paid to speak, which sounds sounds a little laughable at some point, but it allows me to run this little nonprofit that I've got. And so, as long as this wave is out there to be ridden, I figure ride it.
Ride it as long as you can. Absolutely. Well, yeah, that's fantastic. And you just recently wrote a book, or maybe you wrote it a while ago, but it recently was published, called Making Your School Something Special. About that book.
It's an incredibly interesting experience to write a book. Tons of us have books in us waiting to get out. It's a matter of whether kind of the stars can align for the circumstances to do it. And the longer story is a little tedious, but it kind of comes down to by Holly Clark of EdTech Team Press about. To write it, and I wrote it last summer. And when I sent off the first draft to the editor, in full honesty here, there was a certain arrogance of like, hey, I've been writing newsletters for years. I've been writing this other stuff for years. I grew up under the grammatical gun. My mother is a professor of literature and composition. How much editing are these people really going to need to do? Well, so they did their job and sent me back the book, and every single paragraph was chock full of suggestions.
Oh,
and
wow.
I remember looking at it and going, "Oh my God!" Right? But I was like, "No, that's not my voice, or not what I meant." For every one time like that, there was 20 times where I was like, "That's a good suggestion. that makes sense." And it turns out that these people who edit books, they are professionals who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, they would look at my 3 convoluted sentences and say, did you mean this? And I'd well, yeah, I did. Okay, let's write it that way. Okay, So I think it's a book that has a lot of potential to help a lot of teachers and schools on kind of 3 main things, which is How do you make, what really counts for powerfully memorable learning experiences? How do you take learning experiences kind of up the chain so that they're in that space that, great things happen? And then how do you foster and share successes at a school, and how do you build upon those to make great things happen at the school? And then the third thing is, how do you build confidence? How do you build the confidence of individual students and individual teachers, people who can go and to do things that they may not have thought they could? And so, taken together, the idea is that all of this can make for an environment where you build certain kinds of discussion patterns, and you can end up saying, here are the things that we say when we're describing our school. Here are the kinds of things that we can point to, and we've learned to point to them because we've talked about those things as things that we can improve, not simply that are there and are good, but that we can take them and we can do cool things with them. And once people overcome, get over a certain kind of, to talk about either things that don't go well or that do, and teachers tend to be reluctant about both, honestly. Mm-hmm. You can end up in a space that is much more personally and professionally rewarding into being, the kind of environment where people are creating much better stuff for student learning. So that's my quick framework, I guess, or not that quick, but a quick framework for the book, and hopefully it captures the ideas.
Well, it is. I started reading about a week ago, and I am halfway through, and I can tell listeners I am excited to read the next half. I mean, you touched on a couple of things that already have struck me. Just the title, and one of the earlier things in the book is what makes your school special. And as the principal of a school now, it's required me to reflect and kind of get that elevator talk ready. That okay, I've got 30 seconds to tell somebody in an elevator. If he were to ask me, or she were to ask me, why is your school special? Why is Alta Murrieta Elementary special? Because I know it's special, but how am I going to articulate that to somebody else? And just those success surveys that you talked about, I was just reading that part last night, giving staff and teachers, everyone, the opportunity to share what is going on, the positive things that are going on that perhaps a kindergarten teacher may not be aware of if it's happening on the other end of campus in a fifth grade classroom. So that's something I emailed myself as I was reading it last night on my Kindle, make sure to make this Google form to do this. So yeah, I would encourage anyone who's listening, go check out this book, because like I said, I'm halfway through it, and it is good stuff. And my daughter, Rushton, on a personal note, my daughter is a writer. She's a sophomore in high school, and she loves to write. So I'm gonna definitely share this conversation with her just regarding editing, because that may be something in her future that it's like even good writers like you that can make it even better. So anyway, as you were telling me, I was thinking about my daughter. So so I contacted you and asked if you would be willing to come on. I basically put it out there and said, what do you want to talk about? I mean, what kind of stories would you like to share? And you responded and said, how about connecting with students, connecting with ideas? And you said that you had a particular story in mind. So that one, if you would.
Absolutely. And when I first listened to one of the Teaching Tales podcasts, I was like, see, this is awesome. This is about stories. This is, and my frame for this is that there's all kinds of things that we as teachers know that are good ideas. We should do these. It isn't until our heart actually pushes us to do them that we act on the ideas in our head, as I see it. So when we think about sharing stories, I think we're actually talking about not merely this kind of like, oh, this is who we are. I think we're really talking about the vehicles for making things happen that need to happen. And so the story that came to mind when you the podcast was a story that comes from the 1 year that I taught in middle school. So I taught one middle school class for an entire year. I'm telling you, I didn't quit. I didn't give up. It was very, very different than high school and college for sure. And those were the neediest group of human beings I'd ever met in my entire life, right? Which a lot of middle school teachers say, yep, that's it. That's them. I taught video production. There was this kid in the video production class who would come in the same way every day. Her name Christina, right? And she would walk in with just this snarl, like R, no, Christina, good morning. Hope your day gets better, this kind of thing. And just every day. And so on one particular day, I was going to show them how to use Photo Story 3. So this is that great kind of Windows tool.
I remember that
piece of programming, actually one of the best things Microsoft's ever put out, in my humble opinion. And so anyway, so I was like, okay, so you can take pictures and you can make motion, with them, and you can narrate them this way, and give it a shot. Go. In order to do this, in order to show them how to use this program, I needed some pictures to show, right? So I brought in pictures of Chiquita, Flaca, and Gordita. Those are my cats, right? And cats are great. And my wife and I can be in a grocery store, and some child is having a complete hissy somewhere, and we look at each other and we just say, "But all good." So anyway, so I had these pictures of the cats. I'm like, say, okay, I'm explaining how to use Photo Story. I set them to work. Well, one kid gets out of her desk and starts walking over to me. It's Christina. And as she's walking over, the snarl is totally gone. There's this look on her face of like, oh, and I'm thinking, wow, that's a different kind of look for her. And she says, hey, Mr. Hurley. I said, yeah, Christina, what you got? We have cats too. And I thought, wow. And so I said, oh yeah, really? And they're great, huh? And she said, yeah. I said, do you think you could make a little video about your cats using this program? Said, yeah. She goes off, and I'm thinking, wow, that was different. She walks into class the next day. Hey, Mr. Hurley. I'm like, oh my God. And so,
where's the scowl?
I know, got used up, the human quota, right? But the lesson learned is one that I just don't think I'll ever forget. And that's that what will connect you to a child. You never know what it is that will make a child look at you and go, oh, okay, I like this one, and you just don't know. I mean, I didn't plan to like fix my, my snarling student, with a story about cats. I just self in this thing that I was showing them how to do. And somehow, it was exactly what she needed to see. Some teacher, but another person who loves cats. And so, I mean, great student all year, but you never know. And so when we think about connections, be in that space of, I'm not simply responsible for getting content in front of people, right? I'm there to make sure that the content inspires them to see the world in new ways. And there's no formula for how to do that. There's all kinds of possibilities for what we might try in the classroom. But what we want is for the activities and experiences that we craft for the students to be those that look, maybe in some small way, maybe in just how they see you, right? Or maybe in how they see themselves and the future direction that they follow from there. You never know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. As you were, well, gosh, what a great story. They're not going to remember. I mean, if you think about all the things that you taught your students that year in middle school or the other ones, are they going to remember everything in terms of the content? But if you talk to Christina today, she'd probably almost assuredly remember making us video about her cats, and that there was a connection with you that, oh, we have something in common. He's not just my teacher. We're both cat lovers.
Yep. That simple question of what would one remember is one that can frame how we think about what we do as teachers. And we're still in that space if you don't always know, right? I mean, about 10 years ago or so, I was at an event for people who run innovative little nonprofits and people who support people who run innovative little nonprofits. And so I'm there and I'm talking to some folks, and this guy comes up to me, Mr. Hurley, and I fortunately he was wearing a name tag that was useful. And, looked at it and I'm like, hey, Sherman, how are you? As a student in the 90s. Great young man, right? Now, the thing about Sherman to know is that he was one of the first employees of LinkedIn.
Wow.
And he has already retired. So there you go, right? But anyway, the point being, so he saw me, so we get to talking, he's talking about, taking Japanese from me when he was a high schooler, in East Side San Jose when I loved that. He said, hey, Mr. Arnold, you remember those videos we made in Japanese? I said, yeah. Favorite part of high school. And that surprised me. All right. I knew the students enjoyed the video projects. There's a number of things about them that were really powerful. We would watch. So the audience changed from just me to everybody, which changes their thoughts about quality in powerful ways. But I don't know that I would have guessed anyone would stick the superlative on it, that the favorite. And so, we talked about that a bit. It just happens to be that a lot of kids don't feel they have the outlet in school to be this, that, or the other thing, to work with other people, to put something together that everyone will see and enjoy. And something about the videos, they were celebrating each other's work. First time that we did this and we're like watching the videos together, man, after every one, the kids were like, yay, that was great, that was cool. And I remember sitting there thinking, I'm not telling them to do this. I'm not saying, hey, you will now applaud for your peers, right? Instead, it's just happening. They're just celebrating each other. And I thought, how many of these kids go home ever looks at the work they've done for school and says, that was great, that was cool. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, man, this is important, and so we have these moments as teachers where we see something happen and we have to stop and we go, I need to make sure that I'm learning from what's happening right now.
Yeah.
On right now that I'd better not forget, because I don't want it to stop. I want to make sure that this happens I ever teach, So yeah. We have those moments.
No, that's just going back, it's not about content. It is about content. Obviously, we're tasked to teach content regardless of whatever grade level it is. But I just go back, that's not what they're going to remember. And as a principal now, it's so much about that, connecting with kids. Every morning out in the kids are being dropped off, mm-hmm. opening the car doors as they're coming in and greeting them with a high five or, hey, good morning, happy Friday, all those types of connections. One of the things that I have found as a teacher, but now especially as an administrator, is the power of connecting by speaking somebody's name. I don't know if you've ever had that. When somebody speaks my name, it's powerful. When you hear your name, whether it's at a conference or something like that, when someone says, hey, Brent, it's like, whoa, he knows who I am, or she remembers me, or something like that. A couple quick mini stories that relate to each other. A few years ago, I was coming out of a parking lot. I'd gone to Sam's Club, and I'm sitting in my car at a red light, just looking forward, waiting for the light to turn, and out of my peripheral vision to my left, I see movement, and I look, and to the car to my left is one of my former students. And she's in the back seat of the car, and the window is like halfway down, and she's got the biggest smile on her face, and she's going, Mr. Coley, Mr. Coley. She's waving, and I turn the radio off, and I roll my window down, and I said, hey, Chelsea, how you doing? And the smile vanished from her face. Said, I'm Amber. And it was like, oh no! And as Murphy's Law would have it, she was in a turn lane, I was in a straight lane, so her light turns green, so she starts pulling away, and her head is thrown back in laughter, and I'm going, no, 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 as she's just kind of driving away with a look of, oh my gosh, he didn't remember me. He said my name wrong. The crazy thing is, I totally knew it was Amber. And I remembered her parents' names. Somehow Chelsea just came out. It was like, oh my gosh. But then
yeah. I was just going to say, like we're caught off guard. One of those decontextualized moments where it's just like you're trying to put a bunch of information together quickly, and and you have to be kind of in that space where you remember to say, "Wow, man, it's cool to see you."
Yeah,
where you been?
It was one of those where because I remembered so much, parents' names, the best friend's name came out, but then fast forward. A couple years later, I was an assistant principal at a middle school, and one of my responsibilities each day, I was at the front gate. We're coming through the gate. I would be greeting kids. I would also be checking for dress code and things like that. And I would be greeting kids like, "Hey guys, how you doing today? Happy Wednesday morning." And one group of kids came through, and I remember I said like, "Hey, morning ladies, morning gentlemen. Hey, Christian, good morning, bud. Have a great day." And as Christian walked by me, he mumbled something. And as an assistant principal at a middle school, as you taught that year at a middle school, when kids mumble things, you tend to get a little suspicious as to what they're mumbling. And I just said, "Hey," and it wasn't like him to say anything bad. So I just said, "Hey, Christian, what was that?" And he stopped. He looked me right in the eye and he said, "I'm special." And but kind of like, what prompted you to say that? And he said, "Because you said, 'Good morning, ladies. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, Christian.'
Wow.
I'm special." And that has so stuck in my mind, especially in my role now, to whenever I can. Now, I've got 860 kids at my school, and some of them are coming and going, and it's hard to remember everyone's name, but whenever I can, to speak that child's name, that student's name. And I'll have little kindergartners and first graders that I'll say like, "Hey, good morning, Samantha." And she'll say to her friend, "He knows me. He said my name." I mean, there is something about hearing your name. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, if you've ever had any experiences like that or at conferences, I mean, just hearing your name, Rushton, is.
Absolutely. Yeah. For one, I should say this, right? I'm actually finishing up a second book. It's called Making Your Teaching Something Special. And the very first, it's advice. It's just lots and lots of pieces of advice. Each chapter is one piece of advice. The very first one, memorize all their names quickly, right? And I go into the how and why and blah, blah, blah of it. But it essentially comes down to everything you just said, right? Saying someone's name means something. And there's that point of connection that comes from being willing to engage, right? So like the saying of the name is like the first step in an engagement. How do you know that anyone actually cares whether you live or die? Well, they stop and ask you how you're doing, right? They notice things. My first year out of college, I was on a program called JET, Japan Exchange Teaching, and I was an assistant language teacher teaching English alongside Japanese teachers of English in high schools and junior highs in this one particular part of Japan. And as a part of what I did at the school where I was based, I helped with the English language club, which makes sense. You get the native English speaker to involve with it. And there was this one kid in the club who was he was kind of, how to put it, nerdy kid, tolerated by everybody, right? Tried hard, too hard a lot of the time. And, just bless his heart, that's just who he was. But in a club, in a Japanese sense, in a club, you look out for each other. So there's a certain amount of that, right? So, like being in a club, even if you have a lot of trouble connecting with others for whatever reason, there are going to be some connections. It's a healthy piece of how the Japanese system works. Anyway, so one of the things I remember about him is that he had, like, one of his two front teeth was kind of was screwed up, right? Like there was a chunk out of it. I mean, I don't know what happened, but it was screwed up. And then about 2/3 of the way through the school year, I see him after I'd been gone, visiting some other schools, several days, and I see him on campus, and I said, "Hey, man, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm doing well." I was like, "Hey, your tooth, man. Like, did you get that fixed? That's pretty cool." And he stopped, and there was this pause, and he said, it was fixed 2 weeks ago, and you're the first one to say anything."
Oh, wow.
It just,
yeah, no, that's, so what did it mean for you to actually say? I mean, yeah, it took 2 weeks for somebody to do it, but the fact that you were that person,
right? And I'm outside of a structure.
Say something.
I get that, right? The thing for all of us is that it takes so little. It takes so little for us to say, to just notice something, say something, pass along a little compliment. "Hey, I'm glad you're here." It takes so little.
But but the benefits, but it can fill somebody's bucket for a month.
Yep, exactly.
Exactly. Wow. Well, Rushton, thank you. Thank you so much. I can't wait to get this one online and have people listen to this conversation, because you have got this was a great talk. Hey, will you do me a favor?
Of course.
Say something in Japanese.
I can certainly do so. Like, "Nihongo hanasemasu ka? Hanasenai desho," which is, "Do you speak Japanese? I'm guessing you don't," given the look on your face, right? This kind of. But I mean, that part of the fun of something like Japanese is that everybody's impressed. They don't know that it's actually not that difficult a language. They just believe it is, and don't go telling people, because they won't be impressed when they know that I speak. But still, we used to have at the school where I taught in the 90s, the Japanese language cheering section for the homecoming game, and we'd have these banners that read things like, "You can't read this," right? That would be the banner. And we had so much fun with it, but it comes back again, right? What are the experiences that our students have? Right? How do we craft experiences for them? How do they remember what they do? When we talk about something like connections and content, they don't have to be that separate, right? "Hey, what's the coolest thing you've learned in the last week? Hey, good to see you, man. I loved what you were saying yesterday." And the kids are like, "What did I say yesterday?" Right?
Yeah.
All of those moments. So yeah. I love that you're making stories a vehicle for people to really begin sharing ideas for great schools.
Oh, thank you. I'm like you, in church and hearing every time pastor says, "Let me tell you a story," I lean forward. We remember stories. So hopefully people are getting something out of the podcast. So Rushton, thank you again. Totally appreciate the time. The name of your book, Making Your School Something Special, correct?
Yeah, that's it.
All right. So listeners, go ahead and pick that one up. And thank you for listening, everybody. Totally appreciate it. Remember, you can find us at my website, brentcoley.com, on the podcast page, or you can subscribe in iTunes or Google Play. If you like what you hear, give us a review. We would appreciate it. I want to thank everyone who has given us some great feedback. Some of my teachers, Donnie, Natalie, Lori, thank you so much for listening and for the kind words. In a future episode, let me know, because you know where I work, you know where my office is. So, all right, everyone, thanks again for listening. Rushton, thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedule. And we will see everyone, or not see you, we will listen to you next time.